Today we welcome local author Sharran Taylor, otherwise known as the poet Kween Yakini. Thank you for joining us for our Meet the Author program offered by the Virginia Beach Public Library.
Thank you, Chris, for having me.
You are welcome. Let me begin by asking you to tell us about your background and how you got started with writing.
Well, for me, it was a gradual process. As a child, loved to write, but it wasn't really taken seriously. But as an adult, it became a true outlet for me. And so I kind of just went back to it, and then next thing you know, it just became a true passion. And so I started to write and perform. And I got to a point where I had written over 100 poems, if you will, probably close to 200 poems, right? And I'm like, what am I going to do with these poems, And that's when the light was like, well, you got to publish some of it, and just I published the first one, and that book is called Woke, A Poetic Journey. And then that book was received an award from the Nat Turner Library, first book.
Wow.
With that first book, I was able to perform at the Hampton Coliseum for the first African landing. With that poem, with that book, just the first book now, I was able to perform at the Zyders American Dream Theater. So with all of these opportunities, coming to me just from the first book, it's really solidified everything for me. It just let me know that what I was, because things don't just happen that quickly, in a year, you know what I mean, in a year's time. So I was like, well, this is something. This is not just, something I'm playing around with here. This is serious, And once I took it seriously, there was no going back for me.
Yes.
No going back.
Now, have you had any formal training as a writer?
No, this is all, like I said, for me, it was natural as a child and it's natural now. The only difference is I'm able to expand much more on what I'm speaking about because I will research certain things to give me more depth and understanding of the topic that I'm talking about. And so being able to apply that, level of, verbal expression to what I'm saying is what has sort of like given my poetry a little edge. And a lot of what I write is based on history. I'm very big on knowing my history. So I do write a lot of pieces that pertain to slavery, and a lot of things, just in general that Black people have gone through. So that's in fact, in Woke, A Poetic Journey, that was a lot of mostly what I focused on, was a lot of it had to do with history. So the book that I'm going to talk about today, Tracing Black Music Back to the Roots, is going into the history of Black musicians specifically. So I'm going beyond just general history and into a specific background of Black people that I felt did not get the proper recognition, in my opinion. And, I just felt like it was a necessary thing, or I could say as my duty as a Black poetry writer to shine the light on things that people may not know. And so I use my platform to do that, to, unveil the unknown, the hidden things that we might not know in our day-to-day living, to make sure that that knowledge continues to be passed down from generation and it's not forgotten.
Right. What else can you tell us about this latest book of yours?
Okay, so Tracing Black Music to the Roots it came to me, the idea to do the book was when I performed at a Juneteenth event last year called The History of the Hidden Banjo, which was sponsored, I believe, by the city of Virginia Beach and also by the Zyders Dream Theater.
Yes.
So I was the lead person, if you will, in this play or production, and they asked me to write a piece for the play. Now, I had no idea there was a history of the banjo. Like, I'm like, the history of the banjo? What history? Like, and when I started to research it, when I tell you the world of, like, it just was like, you see, this is what it is when we don't know our history. When I started to explore it, I was like, oh my goodness, it was so much. And I was like, and when I tell you, it just inspired me. So when I finished, we did the play, and it was a very good production. It was successful. A lot of people came over to me and was like, do you have that poem that you did in the play? Do you have it in a book somewhere? And I was like, no, I wrote the poem for the play, right? And they were like, well, you need to get that published. You need to, like, I just want the poem, you know what I mean? So I was like, okay, well, I can't just publish one poem, So I was like, well, I'm going to do a whole book about the history of Black music, because if there was that much just on the banjo, it's got to be much more to it.
Yes.
So digging, and the next thing you know, I went into the history of the drums, along with the history of the banjo. I went into the history of the blues. I went into the history of jazz, rock and roll, R&B, hip hop, even Latino music, because during the African diaspora, Africans were dropped off in the Caribbean and Latin America. So they also had influence on the music and culture in those areas as well. So it wasn't just in North America, it was in South America too. So none of these things I knew beforehand. These were all things I discovered as I was doing my research for the book. And I wrote a poem about each, aspect, each place, or each genre, if you will. And then I also felt the need to give a historical background for each poem. So in the book, not only do I have poetry, but I have a historical background right before the poem, so that you understand more of what this poem is trying to convey, and you also understand the time in which these things occurred. I have a poem about the civil rights movement, what that was like to be an artist during the civil rights movement, when there's so much things that were going on around us, right? But these people still had the audacity to stand on stage and sing like nothing was going on. What kind of courage did that take? Because today we get up and sing, and we're not worried about a lot of things that's going on around us that could possibly hurt us. But these people were living under trying conditions, and they persevered to a level that even some artists today can't even match. That's extraordinary. So I just felt like that needed to be heard. And I was like, God must have chose me to be the vessel, so I'm going to do it, So, and I hope that when people get this book and they read it, that they'll see, and they'll have a revelation just as I did, that, wow, we did this. This was something amazing that we should know about. So that's what this book is going to be about, and I'm very proud of it.
Next question for you. Is writing your primary career?
No, unfortunately, it's not a career. It's a passion. It started out as a passion. It will continue to be my passion. I have a 9 to 5. That's a career. Writing can be done at 2 a.m. and I'm not getting paid to get up at 2 a.m. Okay, so when you get up at 2 a.m. to write and you're not getting paid for it, that's not a job. That's something that is part of your life. You know, just like you would get up to make breakfast, I'll get up to write poetry. It's part of my life. You know, sometimes I'm having breakfast and writing poetry at the same time, you know, so it's not even, I don't view it that way.
And are you self-published or do you have a publisher?
I am self-published. And I'll tell you, the first book, Woke a Poetic Journey, I did hire an editor and someone to help me learn how to structure the book, you know, and after that, you know, I did everything else on my own. So that became the blueprint for me, so to speak, to do all my other books. But I needed someone to at least show me the first steps, the process of how to do it. And then I knew, because of my impatience, I knew that I had to be in control because you know, I was like, I can't wait on somebody else to get, you know, when you have an editor, they are editing other people's books. So you have to, they're not always going to have time to get to your book when you want them to. Right. I learned that. And I would be like, is my book ready yet? And they're like, no. I'm like, okay. So see, that told me right there, I can't leave it up to somebody else to, you know, do my book for me, because I really want to be able to control when it's done, how it's done, and everything. I wanted to be, so self-publishing was the best route for my personality because I'm not the type to give my stuff to someone and just say, here, do what you want. I give it back to me when you want. No, that was not going to work for me, because I would have been calling you, is it ready? And you would have been like, if this woman called me one more time. I mean, that's how I am. So I realized, I said, oh, I can't do that. I would drive that person crazy. So I just decided to, and it's been good because I've learned so much in doing it on my own. So that's been good.
And talk about how you promote your work.
I definitely have a good, I would say a good setup in terms of social media, because I started that even before publishing a book came to mind. It was really done just to showcase the poetry and my poetry style, and it just grew. So by the time I published the first book, I had already, you know, had thousands of followers already. So it was sort of like, okay, well, naturally, I have to share it with those people because they've been following me for a few years, right? So they got to witness my growth, in a sense, from seeing me before I published the book all the way till now. Those people have pretty much stayed with me. And then as I became more media savvy, I joined other platforms like Instagram and YouTube and everything. Even if you go to my YouTube page now, which is at Kween Yakini's Poetry on YouTube, you'll see videos that go back to 2015, maybe, when I really first started to get into it. So, you know, yeah, it's so, and then it's like I said, these people have just stayed with me, and I'm on Twitter now, so that's pretty good. I try to just get on every platform that I can, but I'm more prominent on Facebook. That's my strongest platform. Mhm.
Where do you get ideas for your books?
Um, you know, that's an interesting thing for me, because I say that they come from within because sometimes they come to me in my sleep. And if something comes to you in your sleep, it has to come from you. You know, it could have been something that subconsciously I internalized it without realizing it, and then later it manifested in my sleep, right? And it woke me up. I would get up sometimes, as I said, 2 or 3 in the morning and just start writing. It didn't make sense sometimes, but I would just do it because sometimes they turned into really great poems. Some of my best poetry was written when I was half asleep. I'm telling you. And it's like I would write it, and then when I woke up for real, got myself together, I would look at it and I was like, wow. And then I just start tweaking it, and it just turned into something that I don't even know how. Like I'm like, how did I create this? And I just call it divine intervention because that's the only way I could describe it. It's almost like a vision in a way. So that's one way that I get my ideas. I would say through divine intervention, but then other people will challenge me to write something for a specific purpose, like with the banjo, and then that sort of forces my creativity because now I'm looking beyond my own perception or my own ideas and trying to express an idea that someone else asked me to do. So that's a different way. So it's either those two avenues work for me. Someone says to me, "Can you write a poem about something?" I'm able to come up with a poem for that purpose. But then sometimes I just write a poem because it came to me to write it, not because I chose it or pursued it. It just came to me to write it. And so it comes to me in those type of ways usually.
Yes. Tell us a little about your writing process.
My writing process is more like I said, if it's internalized, it'll flow. It really flows easily out. I don't have to force it. It's natural. It sort of just flows out, and the words just come to my mind. The verses, the patterns, everything. It just comes to my mind. I write it. Sometimes I'll get on the computer. And then there are also times like when it's not flowing naturally. It may be something I'm just curious about. And I'm like, well, I want to know more about this. Well, then I'll take the time to research that topic in depth and then draw upon the information that I've discovered, little highlights or fascinating information pieces that I want to highlight on in my poetry. That's that's another way. But I tell you, I have had to expand my vocabulary in ways like words that I know that I'm like, I know I would know these words if I didn't write, But the one thing I could say about being a poetry writer or a writer in general is your vocabulary it grows and expands, and the more it grows and expands, the better your writing becomes. So I really rely on a thesaurus a lot because I don't like to use the same words all the time. I like to use different words, say things in different ways. So I have to know a lot of words to be able to do that. I can't just keep writing the same words because everybody be like, well, every poem sounds the same. But to keep the diversity in the poem to where each poem is unique, you have to be able to use a large vocabulary to accomplish that. So I've worked on improving my vocabulary a lot to help me be able to, especially to publish 4 books. So I would say that. Go ahead.
All right. Where can someone buy your book?
Okay, all my books are on Amazon, but they're also available on barnesandnoble.com and walmart.com. But Amazon is the home base for all of my books. Yeah.
This particular book is not available till April 12th. Is that right?
Yes, it is going to be maybe a little bit earlier, but no later than April 12th. So April 12th is the deadline date for it to be released, but it could be a little bit earlier.
All right. Do you have your books released as ebooks or electronic books as well?
Some of them are in ebook format. Tracing Black Music to the Roots, for now, it'll be paperback. But down the road, I probably will do an ebook release for that book as well. Mm-hmm.
And what is a piece of advice that you would give to an aspiring writer?
Just to embrace what your struggle is, embrace the things that you've gone through, your experiences, because you've gone through that for a reason. I know it's cliche to say everything happens for a reason, but it really does happen for a reason. And it happened to you for a reason. So when you begin to embrace those things and then find the courage to share them, you have the ability to touch so many people who'll be able to relate to what you've gone through. So I would say don't be afraid of sharing who you are with the world, because there are a lot of people out there that are just like you. And when they hear your story, they say, well, that sounds like my story. So that's why it's important to not be afraid of who you are and sharing who you are with the world.
Yes. All right. Would you mind at this point reading us an excerpt from your book?
Yes, ma'am. I am going to be reading, a piece from the book. This piece is called We Know All About the Blues. The blues ain't nothing new to us, 'cause we've been singing the blues since West African griots began recounting the past of our people through oral traditions. For centuries, we've shared our history, utilizing poetry, songs, and spoken word exhibitions. And when we combine that poetry with the music of the Ngoni, we found the basics of the blues. So Black Americans didn't need to be born in Africa, because Africa lives in the womb. That's why our destiny for greatness was already set in motion, and those unthinkable chains were inevitably broken, because the arms of Mother Africa can surpass any ocean. But some will tell you the blues was born in the South, just as B.B. King was born on a plantation. Yet the way he sang and played that guitar took the blues to a higher elevation. Yes, we sang the blues at house parties and social gatherings for recreation, and we perfected elements of the blues through musical refinement and cultivation. Artists like Louis Armstrong created scatting. He invented a technique that was crazy cool. And he shared this with other blues artists so they could alter lyrics to suit their moods. And this singing style was rooted in African chanting, which allowed another layer to our vocal tools. But you can't just sing the blues. It's something you have to feel in the deepest part of your soul. Because when a blues singer hits the mic, it's truly a spectacular sight to behold. Go and listen to Sarah Vaughan, Bessie Smith, Ella Fitzgerald, and Etta James. Their voices were elegant and rich, but they each had their own lane. And their skill levels were truly insane. They were true class singers. That's why we must never forget their names. And we're so thankful for others like Ma Rainey, who gave us that good old black bottom blues. Oh, trust and believe, because the brothers had exceptional vocals too. Singers like Muddy Waters and Ray Charles blessed us with some legendary tunes. But if you were lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time, you could hear some Billie Holiday blues, because Billie had that strange fruit kind of blues. She had that God bless the child type of blues, and sometimes she just gave us that good morning heartache kind of blues. You see, Black music creativity is like a pot of gumbo that just keep on stewing. So no, we still ain't done yet, because we're always improving. From West Africa to the job joints of Harlem, we keep creating and moving. We are the trailblazers of music, so ain't no way we could ever be losing. Although we face many obstacles, we're definitely the music trendsetters. Our music is transformative and groundbreaking, and that's why we deserve that cheddar for the mo better. But Black music wouldn't be what it is today without the influence of the blues. And that's why rock and roll, jazz, and other genres are hybrids of our musical fruits. Yes, there are many our tree has many branches, but the blues will always be the root. So remember, the blues ain't nothing new to us. Because we've been singing the blues since West African griots began recounting the past of our people through oral traditions. For centuries, we've shared our history, utilizing poetry, song, and spoken word exhibition. And when we combine that with the music of the Ngoni, we found the basics of the blues. So Black Americans didn't need to be born in Africa, because Africa lives in our womb. And that is, we know all about the blues.
That's just beautiful.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
Do you have anything else to add? Anything we haven't covered? Anything you'd like to say?
No, I mean, if you would like to follow me on Instagram, my Instagram name is Kween Yakini. If you'd like to follow me on Facebook, it's author Kween Yakini. And on YouTube, it is Kween Yakini's Poetry. And I believe it's the same name on Twitter. So I try to keep it consistent. But yes, if you'd like to follow me, and definitely so that you can find out more information about the book release. And I'm actually preparing to have a book signing on April 23rd. So if you follow me on my platforms, you'll be able to get information about the book signing that I have coming up for April 23rd.
All right. Sharran, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank
Best
you,
of luck with your new
Chris.
book. You're
Thank
welcome.
you. All right, have a good one.
Thank you.